I'm Algebra Annie, and I'm here to help you be successful in your algebra class. No one is perfect. That's why pencils have erasers. Wolfgang Reeb. Our learning targets today are I can solve equations in one variable that contain absolute value expressions.
Now we're going to be solving absolute value equations. And our first one tells us to solve this equation, the absolute value of x. If you remember absolute value was always how far from zero is a particular number. So for this particular question, it wants to know what numbers are 4 away from zero. So if we're at 0, 4 away from 0 would have been either 4 or negative 4 because they are both 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're both 4 away from 0. So if we're looking for the absolute value of x to equal 4, you're telling me that this number inside here is either 4 or he is negative 4. Now, how would we write this out mathematically? The number inside of there was x. You're telling me that x is 4 or that x is negative 4. And this would be our answer for this particular problem. And now we're going to use this basic logic to solve more complicated problems. Now we have the problem 4 times the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 24. To write this out so we can see it a little more clearly, it's 4 times the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 24. We're looking for 4 times what number would give me 24. So I want to know what this is. So I want to undo 4 times, so I'm going to go ahead and divide both by 4. If you have the same number of the same number, remember our fractions, if you had like 3 over 3 or if you had 20 over 20, these all simplify down to 1. So 4 over 4 simplifies down into 1. So we are left with the absolute value of x plus 2 equaling 24 divided by 4 is 6. Well, now I want to know what is the absolute value of x plus 2, where it would say it was 6 away from 0. So what number in here could be 6 away from 0? The number in here could have either been 6 or it would be a negative 6. So we have to figure out how could we make x plus 2 to be 6 or how could we make x plus 2 to be negative 6. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the rest of my work over here. So we're looking for the first case when you said x plus 2 was 6. And then we're going to do the second case where you said x plus 2 was negative 6. So I want x to be by itself. Here's my equal balance beam. I need to move the positive 2. To move a positive 2, you pair it with a negative 2. The x is still there. A positive 2 minus 2 turns to 0, so those are gone. 6 minus 2 is 4. So our first answer is x equals 4. Again, I want to get the positive 2 to go away, so I pair it with a negative 2. I didn't do anything to my x's. A positive 2 minus 2 turns to 0. A negative 6 minus 2 more is a negative 8. So my other answer is a negative 8. So my final answer is x equals 4 and x equals negative 8 are the two answers that would make this statement true. Now we're going to solve the problem. The absolute value of x, when I subtract 3, I would get 4. So I want to know what this is. So if we add 3 to both sides, I still have the absolute value of x. A negative 3 plus 3 turns to 0. My equal balance beam, 4 plus 3 is 7. So you're telling me the absolute value of what number we're looking for equals 7. So what numbers are 7 away from 0? I have 7 or negative 7. So we have the first case when this x equals a positive 7. There's nothing to solve for. I already have x equals. And then we have the second case where this equals the negative 7. X is already solved for, so we're actually done. So your two answers are x equals 7 and x equals negative 7 will be the solution to this problem. And you're done. Now I have the problem 8 equals the absolute value of x minus 2.5. What number, if I were to place it in here, would be 8 away from 0? So this number right in here could have been 8 or it could have been a negative 8. So we need to, whatever is in here, set it equal to 8 and then solve. And then whatever was in here, set it equal to negative 8 and then solve. So we have two cases. We have the case where x minus 2.5 was equal to our positive 8. And then we have the second case where x minus 2.5 is going to be equal to our negative 8. We need to solve both cases to get both answers. So here's my equal balance beam. I want x by itself. I need the negative 2.5 to be paired with a positive 2.5 to make it go away. X is all by itself. A negative 2.5 paired with a positive 2.5 turns to 0 equals 8 plus 2.5 is a 10.5. So my first answer is x equals 10.5. For our second case, my equal balance beam, x by itself, I need to pair the negative 2.5 with a positive 2.5. X is all by itself. A negative 2.5 paired with a positive 2.5 turns to 0. Negative 8 plus 2.5 is a negative 5.5. X is by itself, so that answer is done. So we finally have our two answers. Your answers are x equals 10.5 and x equals negative 5.5 would be the two values for x to make our original statement true. Now the absolute value of something plus 4 is going to equal 4. I want to know what numbers could be placed in here to where when I added 4 to them, they would give me 4. So first we need to get this by itself so I can figure out what this inside is actually supposed to equal. So I need this by itself, which means I need to pair the positive 4 with a negative 4. So I have the absolute value of x plus 3. A positive 4 paired with a negative 4 goes away, equals 4 minus 4 is 0. So now I need to see what in here is 0 away from 0. Well, actually there's only one number, just 0. So since there's only one number, that means that there is then only one case. So x plus 3 had to be 0. So solve for x. I need the positive 3 to be paired with a negative 3 so that it goes away. I'm left with just x. A positive 3 minus 3 turns to 0. 0 minus 3 is a negative 3. Since there was only one case, there's only one case. My answer is x equals negative 3 is the only time where this original statement would have been true. And you're done. Now we're going to solve the problem 5 equals the absolute value of x plus 2 plus 8. So what number do you add to 8 to get 5? Well, I want to know what this one number is. So that means the added 8 needs to go away. You pair a positive 8 with a negative 8 to make it go away. 5 minus 8 is a negative 3. The absolute value, we did not do anything to it. Positive 8 minus 8 turns to 0, so it zeroes out. It goes away. So that meant the absolute value of whatever this in here would give me a number of negative 3. What numbers are negative 3 away from 0? So you're thinking distance can't be negative. Since distance cannot be negative, then this cannot be true. If this can't be true, then you have no solution. And that's your answer, and you're done. Now we're going to solve our new problem. 2 minus some value is going to give us 7. So I'm going to write it over here so I make sure that I actually have room on my board. I want to know what is this. So that means I need to move this positive 2. You move a positive 2 by pairing it with a negative 2. Positive 2 minus 2 turns to 0, so it zeroes out. I'm left with a negative absolute value of negative 2x minus 5 equaling 7 minus 2 is 5. This is a negative absolute value. So I divide both sides by a negative 1, so that negative goes. So I'm left with the absolute value of 2x minus 5, supposed to equal a negative 5. I want to know what number could I put in here where it would be negative 5 spaces away from 0. Distance cannot be negative. Since distance cannot be negative, there is no number you could put in here to make negative 5 be the distance from 0. That meant your answer is no solution. And you're done. Now I want to know negative 6 plus the absolute value of my x minus 4 would equal a negative 6. So I'm going to rewrite it out here so I have room to actually do my math. I want to know what do I add to negative 6 to make it negative 6. So I want this by itself. So I'm going to move the negative 6. To move a negative 6, you pair it with a positive 6. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. I'm left with my absolute value of x minus 4 to equal negative 6 plus 6 is 0. Now what number could I put in here to tell me that it is 0 away from 0? There's actually only one case. The number 0 is the only number that is actually 0 away from 0. So I only have one case where that whole inside stuff is actually going to be 0. So what is x? I want to move the negative 4. To move a negative 4, you pair it with a positive 4. I still have my x value. Negative 4 plus 4 turns to 0, so it zeroes out. It goes away. 0 plus 4 is a positive 4. So you only have one answer, and your answer is x equals 4 is the only way that this statement will be true. And you're done. So we have our new problem. 9 is going to be the absolute value of x plus 5. So I have 9 equaling the absolute value of x plus 5. I want to know what number in here is going to be 9 spots away from 0. Well, I know that 9 is going to be 9 spots away from 0, but so is negative 9. These are the two numbers that are 9 steps away from 0. So those are the only two options that this could equal. So we have case 1, where all that inside is equal to positive 9. And we have case 2, where all that inside equals the negative 9. And we need to solve for both cases. So for the first case, I need x by itself. The only way to move a positive 5 is to pair it with a negative 5. Still have the x value. Positive 5 minus 5 turns to 0. 9 minus 5 is 4. So our first way to make this statement true is x equals 4. Second case, I want the x by itself. The positive 5 needs to move, so we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. X is still here. A positive 5 minus 5 turns to 0. It goes away. Negative 9 minus 5 is a negative 14, and you're done. So there are two ways to make this statement true. Either x is going to be 4, or x is going to be a negative 14, and you're done. So our new problem, we have the absolute value of 3x, and then we add 2 to that, it gives us 8. So we want to figure out what is the absolute value of 3x. So I want this by itself, which means this positive 2 needs to go away. You pair a positive 2 with a negative 2. I still have my absolute value of 3x. Positive 2 minus 2 actually zeroed out. 8 minus 2 is 6. So I'm trying to figure out what number could I put inside the absolute value to where that number is always 6 away from 0. So you could either put 6, because he is 6 away from 0, or you would have a negative 6, because he's also 6 away from 0. So we have two cases. Either this inside is equal to the positive 6, or that inside is equal to the negative 6. So solving for case 1, I want the x by itself. The x is attached to the 3 by multiplication. You undo multiplying by dividing. The number that needs to go away is the number you divide by. 3 over 3 turns to 1, so we end up having x by itself. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So x equals 2 is our first answer. For our second case, I want x by itself. X is connected by multiplication, so we're going to undo it by dividing. The 3 is the number that needs to go away. The 3's eliminate, so I have x equaling negative 6 divided by 3 is a negative 2. So we have two different answers. Either x to be positive 2 or x to be negative 2 are going to make this original statement true. And you're done. So we have 2 times the absolute value of x is going to give us 18. So 2 times what gives us 18? So I want to know what the absolute value of x is going to be, which means this multiplied 2 needs to go away. You undo multiplying by 2 by dividing by 2. 2 over 2 eliminates to 1, so I have absolute value of x equaling 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I need to know what number could I place inside the absolute value to where it is 9 away from 0. Well, I know 9 is 9 away from 0. Negative 9 is also 9 away from 0. So we have two cases. Either this inside stuff is going to be 9 away from 0, or that inside stuff is going to be negative 9 away from 0. X is already solved for us, so you're actually done in case 1. X was already solved for us, so you're actually done in case 2. So you have your two answers. Either x is going to be 9, or your x is going to be negative 9 are the two answers to make the original statement true. And you're done. So now our new problem, we have the absolute value of x minus 3. When you take 6 away from it, you end up getting 2. So writing it over here on the side so I have plenty of room to work. What number, when I subtract 6 from it, gives me 2? I need to figure out what this over here is. So I need to get him by himself, which means the negative 6 needs to be paired with a positive 6. Those turn to 0. They zero out. So the absolute value of x minus 3 equaling 2 plus 6 is 8. I need to figure out what number could I put in here to where that is 8 away from 0. So what numbers are 8 away from 0? 8 is 8 spots away from 0. Well, so is negative 8. That meant this inside stuff could have been, so this inside stuff could have been 8 away from 0. Or this inside stuff is a negative 8 because he is also 8 away from 0. So I need to solve for x. Negative 3 needs to be paired with a positive 3. So I have x Negative 3 plus 3 zeros out, turns to 0 on the calculator, equals 8 plus 3 is 11. So here's our first answer. Second answer, negative 3 needs to be paired with a positive 3 to make it go away. I'm left with x. Negative 3 plus 3 zeros out. There's nothing to write. Negative 8 plus 3 is a negative 5. And these are my two answers. So you have x being 11 and x being negative 5 are the two different ways that you would make this original statement true. And you're done.
What did we learn today? I can solve equations in one variable that contain absolute value expressions, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow in class.